Hi there, welcome to Computer Science 30S. This is Scratch Module Lesson 7, and we're going to talk about recursion and composition of functions. And before I get into that, I said that I would show you how to save your last one and from Lesson 6, so let's do that first. Here's the code from Lesson 6. We've got under our operators, we should have a block called max value, and this is our main script here. So what you should do here, if you haven't done so, is you should get rid of this, and then you should save it. Save as. I'm going to save it somewhere. Call it max value block or something like that. It has no main script, and then anytime you want to use it, let's just start up a new one here. And here's my new one. I can have anything that I want in it. Blah, blah, blah. Do what have you. That type of thing. And if I want to use the max value block, I simply go import project. I go and find the max value block. And now I have this in my operators. Should have it here. So now I can use it here. So that's how you sort of combine two things together. So I hadn't shown you that in the last lesson, so I thought I'd better do that. Okay, moving on now to composition of functions. So our custom-made blocks are blocks like any other. We can use them in other block definitions. To demonstrate this, we're going to make a block that computes the maximum of 3 values. So when a custom-made block calls itself, this is called recursion. And recursion is a huge fundamental idea in computer science. When a block or a script or a subroutine calls itself, we call this recursion. And we've got some examples coming up that show you that. This technically isn't recursion. I'll talk more about that in a sec here. We're going to repeat the steps from the last tutorial to make this version of max block, also only allowing number inputs. And then in the script for the block, we can use 2 copies of our previous max block. So you should uncheck atomic, and we're going to talk more about atomic stuff later. This creates a new max value block that accepts 3 inputs, so max of x and y and z. And then it reports the max of the first value down here, the max of x, and the max of y and z as the max of all 3. So it's going to call itself. Down here, it's going to find the maximum of y and z, and it's going to report that back to the main code. As I was saying before, this is not technically recursion since the 3-value max block does not call itself, but it does illustrate a block calling another block. It's very close to recursion, and it's just really the number of inputs here that sort of differs. So kind of in the gray area between recursion and not. Okay, so let's go ahead and show you how to do that. All right, so we're here at BYOB, and we're going to make this 3-variable max block. So I'm going to max value block. So I'm going to make a block and make sure that it's a reporter and that it's an operator. And I'm going to call it max of %x and %y and %z. And there I go. I'm going to uncheck atomic because I don't want that, and we'll explain that in a little while. And now I have to report something down here. Now this is where it gets really neat. All you do is you use the max block that we used before, and we're going to use 2 of them. So we're going to pick 2, and I'm going to put this inside there like that. I'm going to report that, and I'm going to put x and y and z. And so what happens here is it determines the maximum value of x and the maximum value of y and z. And so y and z is already defined. We've already written that script. We've already imported it. We find the max between y and z, whatever it is, and then we compare it to x and see which one is bigger. And I am basically done. I go like this. If you want to ask for x and y and z, you can do that. But just to show you how quick it works, I'm going to get rid of those, and I'm just going to say under looks, I'm going to say, and I'm going to go down to my operators. I'm going to pick this 3-way max one, and I want to find the max of 5 and 10 and 15, and it should run. I got 5, 10, 51. It shouldn't matter here. Let's hit run, and it knows which one of those 3 is the maximum. And I've already done, all I've done is I've used, sort of recalled itself. I've called this one here. All of the actual programming is done in here. We've called a new block. It calls itself, and it's called max of 3 different things. And you can go ahead and you can play around with that if you like. Okay, so a little practice one here. I'd like you to create a new block that accepts 3 values to be added together. It's kind of a pointless kind of thing, but it's a nice little exercise in sort of doing the stuff that we just did. Go ahead and try that. Put the video on pause, and then I'll show you the solution.
All right, so hopefully you had a chance to try this out. It's a little bit tricky. I had to take a few minutes myself to try to figure it out, and let me just show you the solution to do this practice block. We're first of all going to go to variables, and we're going to make a block. It's going to be a reporter block and an operator, and the problem here is the little plus sign. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to call this %x, there's the plus sign, %y, there's the other plus sign, and %z. Now this is good for all sprites. There we go. No, we didn't get the variables right here. Let's do something. Let's try that again. Make a block, operators, reporter, %x plus %y plus %z. There we go. So there's our block definition. We're going to need a script variable, which I'm going to call sum. And then I'm simply going to go in here. I'm going to set sum equal to, and then I'm going to I'm going to double up this. I'm going to add that in there, and it's going to take the sum of all those 3. And we'll go like that. And then we have to report something, so we're going to report sum. So now I've got a block that I can use over here. Let's make a variable. Total, and I'm going to set total to the block that I just created. This one right here. And there you go, there you have it. This is the one that I did before that I didn't do very well on. So there's your answer how to do that. Let's move on. Okay, remember now we're talking about recursion. Remember that this occurs when a block calls itself, not another block. So we're going to try to write some blocks to draw a Sierpinski triangle. So like this, as you can see, we're basically drawing a triangle, and we're going to be drawing smaller and smaller ones. So this is a perfect example of recursion. So let's create a new block. You can pick whatever category you want for the block. Doesn't really matter. This category just tells BYOB what tab to put your block on. It will work exactly the same way no matter what category it's in. It just might have a different color. Since the drawing commands are under motion, we're drawing a triangle. That's the category that we're going to pick. So for our first block, we're going to create 3 of them. We're going to make it a reporter block. Remember that in BYOB, a reporter block is a block that returns a value. Java calls it a return method. Liberty Basic calls it a function. I think the generic computer science term is a function, although methods are sort of becoming the word that people use now. What this block is going to do is take 2 points and find the midpoint. And we're going to need that for later in our draw triangle block. So let's create a new block called midpoint, just like this right here. Note the use of report command here. You could also create a variable for the midpoint, then use the report box at the bottom. So let's go ahead and create this block right here. Oh, I'm in Scratch. I need to be in BYOB. Let's create a new project. Okay, so I'm going to create a block called midpoint. And I'm going to put it under motion, but it could really be under any category that you want. And we're going to call it MIDPOINT. And it's a reporter block. And it takes two variables, which we will call point 1 and a second one which we will call point 2. I need a script variable called mid. And now I'm going to set mid equal to point 1 plus point 2, and then we're going to divide by 2. And that whole thing has to be divided by 2. So, and that will handle brackets there. And so here we go. This is our reporter block that actually finds a midpoint. Okay, if you didn't follow that, just press pause and go back and try to complete this. Alright, the next part to our Sierpinski triangle recursion program is to create a command block that doesn't report anything back. It's not a reporter. It's just a subroutine. We're going to call it draw line, and we're going to make it like this. This is the block itself definition. And it basically draws a line between 2 points, but it keeps the main script nice and clean. It doesn't, all of the sort of the details are in here kind of thing. So let's go ahead and create that. So once again, we're going to go to variables. We're going to make a block. It's going to be a motion block. It's going to be command. It's not going to be a reporter. And we're going to call it draw line. And we're going to have 3 points in there. We're going to have x1. We're going to have y1. We're going to have x2, and we're going to have y2. Okay, there we go. And go to the pen palette. Set it smaller so I can see. Pen up. And we're going to go to a certain point, that point being x1 and y1. We're going to put the pen down, and then we're going to use another go-to. We're going to go to x2, y2. We're going to lift our pen up, and we're just going to slow it down a little bit here. Put a weight in there. Just to slow it down a bit. I've got 0.01 seconds in my example. That seems awfully short period of time. Let's go 0.2 seconds for now, and we'll see how that works. Okay, so now I should have under my motion, I've got a draw line command as well. Now, the third block that we're going to create is a block called draw triangle, and this is going to accept 6 data items, 3 sets of XY coordinates, and a counter that keeps track of the level of recursion. Okay, so we're going to have to create a block here called draw triangle with all these different inputs. We're going to draw the 3 sides, and then we're going to check for the recursion level here. So I'm just going to create this while you watch, and you'll have a chance to do it yourself if you press pause. Okay, so once again we're going to go to variables. We're going to make a new block. It's going to be a motion one. It's a command. It's not a function. We're not returning anything. And we're going to call it draw triangle. And with all those different variables, I think I'm just going to go ahead and do it this way. And I'm going to use this method here. So the first one is x1. And then we've got x2. And then we've got, sorry, that last one should have been y1. That's better, x1, y1. And now we've got x2, y2, x3, y3, and we also want a level of recursion. We're going to call that CNT, counter, that type of thing. So we have a counter. Okay, now I'm going to use my draw line subroutine that I've already created under motion. And we're going to draw a line. We're going to do that 3 times. And we're going to draw a line between x1, y1 and x2, y2. Then we're going to go from x2, y2 to x3, y3. And then we're going to go, the last one is going to go from x3, position 3, x3, y3, back to the original location, which was x1, oh, just one there, x1, y1. Okay, so that's going to actually draw the 3 sides of the triangle. And let's put a comment in there. I guess you can't actually make comments inside blocks. That's unfortunate. Okay, then we're going to do an if here. We're going to check to see if the variable container, oh, I need my, there it is there. Drag that down. I'm going to check to see if my level of recursion is, if I'm done or not. So I'm going to check to see if it's greater than 0. And if it is greater than 0, then I'm going to call the program draw triangle once again. I'm going to call draw triangle from the draw triangle program. Okay, this is indeed recursion. So now I'm going to draw a triangle from x1, y1, and then I'm going to use my midpoint formula that I used. The midpoint of x1 and x2. Oops. Like so. And then the midpoint of y1 and y2. Oh, I need midpoint in there again. Like so. And then midpoint of x3, x1. And then the midpoint of y3, y1. Something's missing here. That one goes in there. That one goes in there. I'm still missing. Draw a triangle between x1, y1, midpoint, x1, x2, midpoint. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this first. I'm going to put that container minus, or counter minus 1 in there. that in the last one. There we go. Midpoint y3, y1 goes in there. x3, x1 goes in there. And y1, y2 goes in there. There we go. That's better. Get rid of that guy. Okay, so this is going to draw a triangle between those points there. Then you have to repeat the whole thing just like this. I'm going to give you a few minutes to do that. I'm going to take a few minutes as well, pause the video here and complete this, and then we'll talk about it. Okay, that took me a few minutes to create. It probably took you a few minutes as well. I'll just give you a moment here to have a look at this, put the video on pause if you need to, make sure you've got all your points in the right spot type of thing, and then we'll take a moment and go through the triangle. So put the video on pause here if you need to. Alright, so let's have a look at how this program works. So we're going to accept 6 points, or 6 inputs, plus the counter one. So it's x1, y1, which is down here, x2, y2, which is over here, and y3, x3, y3, which is up here at counter level. And it's going to draw a line between those 2 points. So these lines here, once we've drawn the 3 lines between the outer part, we check to see if our counter is bigger than 0, which means I have more levels to go. If it is, then I'm going to now draw a triangle between x1, y1, which is right here, and the midpoint of x1, x2, which is right there, and the midpoint of y1, y2. So it's going to draw this line right to here in the same color. Then it's going to go from x3, x1 to the midpoint of x3, x1, which is this one right here. I'm going to draw that line, and then it's going to draw this line. Okay, that's what this draw triangle does. This draw triangle here, if you look carefully, you'll see that it draws this triangle here. And then this last one down here draws this triangle using the midpoint calculations. And if the counter is, and then we subtract -1. And what that does is if I need to, I will draw these triangles in here. And if I still have more to go, we'll draw these triangles in here. Now there's quite likely a way that you could simplify this. In fact, you really, instead of drawing triangles, what you should do is be drawing from this midpoint. Draw this line, midpoint to midpoint, midpoint to midpoint, midpoint to midpoint. Might be a more efficient way to do this, but the same idea here in under recursion. So if we still have levels of recursion to go, if the counter is greater than 0, then it draws a new triangle between the current x1, y1 point and the midpoints of the other sides, and it does this for all of the 3 points of the current level triangle. Notice how the count variable is decreased each time that draw triangle calls itself. And once again, remember, if you're calling a function, calling a subroutine draw triangle within itself, that's referred to as recursion. Okay, so now it's just a matter of putting our draw triangle to use. Add the following to the scripts for your sprite. This is the main code here, and you should be able to draw a triangle between these points. And if you put a level of recursion 5, you will get 5 levels of triangles. So let's see if our program will work. When green flag is clicked, I'm going to hide my sprite, Lonzo. I'm going to clear anything that might already be there. And now I'm going to use my new block that I've created called draw triangle. And I'm just going to pick some points. 215. Sorry, minus 215. Minus 170. 0. 170. 215. Minus 170. And my level is 5. And let's see what it does. And if you look closely here, you'll see that it draws the smallest levels first because it has to go all the way down to counter of -1. So it draws them sort of in this order. The smallest one first. It's still working in this corner here because that's the first one that's being called. And once this corner is complete, then it's going to go to this
corner of the triangle here. Pardon me, it's going to go to the top one. I guess it depends on which order you put the draw triangles in. And you can see it's taken quite a while. This is actually I've slowed it right down. You might remember, let's just stop that. I think somewhere in here, let's just see where I did it. Yes, under draw line, I put 0.2 seconds. So that's much too slow. That's why it was 0.01. Maybe it doesn't even need to be there. Let's take it out and see what happens. Much faster. Okay, so you can see here that with a little bit of planning, a little bit of thinking, using the concept of recursion, you can draw quite a complex drawing figure here. If you were to try to draw this with a series of ifs, you would be here forever trying to create something like that. So please keep in mind the idea of recursion, a wonderful little concept in computer science. Okay, so I'd like you to change the code now to ask for a level of recursion. Try it out for level 1, level 2, and so on. Pretty simple to do. What did I call it? I called it level. Okay, let's see if that works. If I ask for recursion level of 2, I get my recursion level of 2. There's my big triangle. This is the second level down here. Okay. And that's all we have for this particular lesson. There is no hand-in assignment, but you should play around with recursion. One thing you might want to do if you've got some time, if you're ahead, you could go ahead and look and see if you can. Let's go back to the block itself here. I think there's likely a simpler way to draw a triangle rather than do all this. See if you can work it out so that instead of redrawing lines on top of one another, you just draw lines between midpoints. There should be a way to do that in here. You're just drawing lines between midpoints. I'm thinking all of this can come out, and you're going to actually use draw line in here, and you're going to draw lines, 3 lines between the midpoints. See if you can get that to work. All right, have a good day. Okay, I've decided to actually add an assignment to this lesson here. So I'd like you to take your triangle program that we created, make sure you've added comments to it, and I'd like you to change it now so that it creates square fractals like this, and you will use the midpoint and the draw line blocks again. So you may want to consider how this works. Here is the main level square, like so. And then it's simply, you want to call that square again, but you're going to call, say this is x1, y1, this is x1 up here, x2, x3, and x4, and of course the corresponding y's. So you would draw that shape, that square, and then you would draw a square from this midpoint right here to y2. Sorry, you would draw the line from this midpoint here, this midpoint here, and then this midpoint here, so this midpoint there. And then you have to locate the upper left-hand corner. Draw a line from midpoint to midpoint, midpoint to midpoint. And a little bonus kind of thing here. See if you can get the upper right-hand corner to be shaded. Make sure your new blocks are renamed properly. You've changed it to draw square. So go ahead and give that a try. And the second part to this assignment, I'd like you to adjust your sorting code that you created a few lessons back so that it uses a block that you create called swap. It accepts 2 numbers that are indexes for elements and then swaps them. So your main script will look like this. This is the bubble sort. We're going to change this one item here. If the one item, if the next one is less than the current one,
then we're going to swap items. So this swap items here, basically you're going to take that little bit of code that was in there and you're going to rename it. You're going to redefine it as a block called swap items. Just makes this code here just a little bit cleaner type of thing. So go ahead and try that as well. That is all for today.